Hi, this is Brit Bennett, and this is The Vanishing Half. The Vanishing Half is a story about Desiree and Stella, who are identical twin sisters who grow up inseparably as children, but decide to live their lives as adults on opposite sides of the color line.
The town where these twins grow up, Mallard, Louisiana. Is this based on a real place?
It's based on a place that my mom remembers hearing about when she was a child in Louisiana. When my mom told me the story, I became really interested in it because not only is it very striking and disturbing, but just thinking about the idea of not only privileging light skin, but like instituting it almost, or sort of genetically engineering it within your population. That was so spooky to kind of think about. And I think that was one entry point into the story that really fascinated me.
Why do you think you're drawn to that concept of townspeople as a collective voice?
I'm often just drawn to these small communities and the ways in which they have values that are passed on, and sometimes those values are really good, and sometimes those values are very harmful. So I like the idea of novels as stories of community, the idea that any minor person in the town could be as interesting as your protagonist. I think that's a way that I think about the world, and a way that I like to think about fiction.
You tend to focus on the outcomes of decisions without getting into, was this the right thing or not the right thing? And I'm wondering, what makes that a more interesting kind of story for you to tell as a writer?
I think in general, binaries are boring. And I think, is this character good or are they bad? Or was this choice right or was it wrong? Those are uninteresting questions just because they're simple questions. And that's not the ways in which any of us move through the world. Our lives are so complex. So I always am trying to think about that third option or another way of thinking about the choices that the character has made. I think particularly for The Vanishing Half, often stories about passing are often quite moralizing. And I was not interested in punishing Stella. I really, what I found most interesting is what are the implications of this on her life once she's made this choice? How does that shape her life and also shape the life of her child and sort of this family line as it's moving in this different direction?
You made these characters not just sisters, but identical twins.
I loved the idea of twins as a way to explore identity in this book, but also thinking about the complexity of that bond, because it's both claustrophobically close and they are constantly sort of wanting to pull away from each other, but at the same time, they're both afraid to be apart from each other because they've never had to be on their own.
Brit, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us for A Word on Words. I'm Mary Laura Philpott. Keep reading.
I think reading everything, reading things that are bad or good or interesting or boring, I think you learn from anything that you read. Even if you hate the book, you're still learning something from it.